Today I have 4 DIY wood Christmas decor projects. Today is What Would You Make, hosted by Connie's Woodshop, Indiana Jones, and Rustic and Lace DIY. Their channels are listed in the description box along with the playlist. For project number 1, I'm using one of these wood slices from Dollar Tree. I'm also using a printed off image from my computer, which I did mirror, and I printed it on a LaserJet printer on really cheap paper from the Dollar Tree. Now I'm painting the center of the wood round with chalk paint in white. Once the paint is dry, I'm going to add Mod Podge to my image and apply that to the wood round. I'm going to smooth this out as best I can, and I'm going to let it sit overnight. The next day I'm going to come in with a little bit of water, and I'm going to kind of rub it into that paper until I can see the images starting to come through the paper. Then as I rub my fingers, I'll rub away the white part of the paper and the ink should be left behind. This does take some time, but if you just go at it gently and you use thin paper, it works much, much better. Deidre on Our Upcycled Life has lots of videos on how to do this. Once I've brushed away all the paper scraps there, I'm going to apply a coat of Big Top by DIY and then add a ribbon hanger. For project number 2, I'm going to be using some thrifted wood blocks. So I have these triangle shapes. I have glued them together as I have shown here, and now I'm going to be giving all 3 of them a coat of fusion paint in cast iron. As you can probably guess, I'm making Christmas trees, so the larger tree now will get a coat of Waverly white chalk paint. I'm not looking for full coverage here. I want those imperfections in the blocks to show. Now I'm going to be using a piece of scrap wood just to scrape along the top of the wet paint. It gives it kind of a chippy, aged look. And I'm really liking how this scrap piece of wood turned out as well. Now I'm going to embellish this tree with some stencils from Dollar Tree and with some spackle. I'm just smearing the spackle onto the stencil just as if it were icing. And once I have it completely covered, I'll pull that stencil up and replace it at the bottom. I'll repeat this process at the bottom and also at the top of the tree. Once all of the spackle is in place, I'm going to let this dry overnight. The next day, I came in with some hot glue and a wooden spool for the trunk to our tree, and I also added a wood star to the top. For the second tree, I'm using Antique Green by Folk Art. Once the paint has dried, I'm using some of this decoupage paper, and I'm going to decide exactly which part I want to show on the tree, and I'm going to cut out the triangle shape. I'm going to apply my Mod Podge and the decoupage paper. Once the Mod Podge had dried, I'm going to add one of these wood slices from Dollar Tree for the trunk. For the last tree, I am using a little bit of candle wax on the tree so that the paint will not adhere to those places where the candle wax remains. Next, I'm adding some designs using my glue gun. Once the glue is dry, I'm going to paint over the designs with this fusion paint. I can't remember the name of it. It is a darker red shade. Now for the trunk for this tree, I'm using a base from a bottle brush tree that I used some rub and buff on in gold, and I'm placing a wooden skewer with some wood glue along with a couple of wood beads. I trimmed the wood skewer down to the length that I wanted it and then added wood glue. To make those glue designs stand out a little bit, I did use some gold rub and buff. And this completes this little trio of trees. In this project, I'm going to be making a bundle of peppermint sticks, perfect for any little tiered tray. These are some shorter dowel rods that I got, I think, at a thrift store. They might have come from Dollar Tree, but I think they were from a thrift store. And I'm just going to give them a couple of coats of Waverly White chalk paint. Once they were dry, I added some painter's tape and I twisted that around each of the wood sticks to make a peppermint design. Once I had the tape in place, I used Waverly chalk paint in crimson to paint those white spaces. I lost the footage or forgot to hit record for that, but once they're dry, I'm going to use my little finger sander just to sand over, and this helps with any imperfections as well. I did give the peppermint sticks a coat of Big Top by DIY. And then I'm going to tie the three together with some jute twine and add some Christmas greenery. I also decided to go ahead and add a couple of these mini pine cones. The last project today is an ornament. I'm using some of these wood shims and these little cedar pieces that I had in my stash. I'm trimming the small cedar pieces down to make a candle flame shape. I did get this idea from Our Shabby Cottage, so be sure and check out her channel. I trimmed 2 of the wood shims down so that I would have 3 different heights. Now I'm using gold rub and buff to color the flames. The candles will get a coat of Waverly Plaster Chalk paint. I'm using Tight Bond glue to attach the flames to the back of the candles. Now I'm using my hot glue gun to make some drippy wax at the top of the candles. And then I will touch up the wax with some of that Waverly Plaster Chalk paint. Before I glue them together, I'm using this ink pad in brown just to go around the edges of the candles to give them a little bit more definition. Once the paint had dried and the ink had dried, I hot glued my candles together and I added a jute twine hanger. Now to add my own little spin on this ornament, I'm going to be stamping the words "Light of the World" onto the candles. I also attached some ribbon and lace and a gold star, and I love the look of this ornament. I'm so glad you joined me today for What Would You Make? I would like to thank our lovely hosts, and please look at their channels in the description box below, as well as the playlist. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to share the chic. Bye now.